Ok. Tá tudo, estão todos.
Is that all set? All set? Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Pedro Mendes, and I'll be the moderator for this session. I'd like to thank you for your presence. Are you getting the interpretation? A minute, please. You getting the interpretation now? 1, 2, 3, testing. English ready. English ready. English ready. Interpretation ready. English ready. Can you hear me? English interpretation ready. English interpretation ready. English interpretation ready. 1, 2, 3, testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. Can you hear me on the English channel? Can you hear me on the English channel? 1, 2, 3, testing. English interpretation ready, ready, ready. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me on the English channel? Very well. This time, technology is not to be blamed. There is the Muffin law. If it, but the technology things tend to go wrong, especially when we are to discuss about it. But I'll be the moderator, and I believe that all the conditions are now set. As I was saying, I'd like to thank you for your presence. To, and today we are going to talk about this topic that directly and indirectly affects all of us. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the presence of the distinguished presenters or speakers, some of which were still tired from the long trip. We have our guests. We have Mr. Marian Filimani. I don't pretend. I like to be a gentleman, but I believe that I'm starting with the ladies first. Maria Filimani. So, with your permission, and we are going to have this conversation, a one-on-one conversation. It's going to be a friendly conversation, and let's just hope we'll be able to learn within the spirit that our honorable minister from Zambia, within the Ubuntu African spirit, one for all and all for one. So it's within the spirit that we are going to attempt to discuss this topic that is easy to discuss, but it can become difficult if we want to make it difficult. I'm not here to do everything, and we just hope that this topic will be as pleasant as possible. And Marian comes from the African Union, Telecommunications African Union. African Telecommunications Union was founded in 1967, and and it runs its activity in two fundamental pillars. One, to safeguard that there is access to communications to all Africans without any exception, with no exception, and that is a task, that is an objective, but that on our daily basis, and with a lot of hope, we've been able to conquer, to achieve. So we can clearly see the telecommunications development indicators in Africa in global and in Angola in particularly. And afterwards, we have Ana Rita Shengonga. I will just call you Ana Rita, who's coming, she's the representative from the International Telecommunications Union. The International Telecommunications Union was founded many years ago in 1867. 1867. Those who can do counting, those who know maths, and those who are from my age, when I was born, this union already had 100 years of existence. So it was founded in 1867, but it 65, but it never changed its focus. Its mission has always been to guarantee or safeguard that our communications will be processed in an harmonious, standardized manner by using the same rules, and that is why any phone call we make this point in time, any access to internet, any communication whatsoever we do, has in its backup the work of the International Telecommunications Union. And Ana Rita is the representative of this institution for the 15 SADC countries, including 16 SADC countries, including Angola, because Seychelles has already. These are 16 SADC countries. So Seychelles has already returned to SADC, and family is complete. And Ana Rita is our representative. So the two ladies are extremely familiarized to talk about broadband issues, connectivity, and access to the non-connectors, especially from the policies perspective, policies and regulation perspective. Our sector works as an harmonious group, is a union of many stakeholders. From the many stakeholders, we have the policymakers, we have the regulators, but we also have the operators, the equipment producers, and more importantly, the consumers. Those who are the final objective of all these action. And for these, we have from the Angolan part representing us is Global, which at this point in time is one of the biggest, largest infrastructure telecommunication companies, and also in terms of power supply, one of the largest power supply companies in Angola. And as you know, that despite many evolutions over the years, but it continues, power supply continues to be a huge challenge in Angola due to the difficulties in resorting to alternative energies. So Anglobal is represented by Manuel Tausada from Angola. We also have with us our brother Paul Lanik, Paul Nalika.
Okay, upon
You see, Paul Nalika represents AST, an innovating company that over recent years was in the headlines for being able to make the first satellite phone call by using a ordinary smartphone. We are used to satellite phone calls with those huge, huge phones, and we could tell from far that we were before a satellite phone. But last but not least, we have with us our Antonio Coelho, which happens to be the CTO of Huawei in Angola. Huawei is a leading company. It belongs to the leading companies in terms of equipment supply, in terms of ICT. It was founded in 1987, if I'm not mistaken, and it has been able to provide a huge support for the network and service expansion, not only in Angola but all over the world. So these set of experts will be able to entertain us in the next minutes to come. But I had to make this introduction. But even so, you in the introduction of this topic, I want you to be aligned with what is expected. And why was this topic selected? Broadband. Because today we look at the broadband access not as a luxurious, not as a fashion, but as a need. Today, nowadays, we won't be able to live without access to broadband. And when I talk about us, we're talking about us as individuals, we're also talking about companies, we're also talking about institutions and nations. And the multiplying effect of access or broadband access is immeasurable. Studies point out that 10% of the growth for broadband has a crucial impact on GDP of nations, especially our nations, our developing nations. At this point in time, we are getting to the 24 millions of cell phone users, and we're getting to 10 million 10 million internet users. It's a huge step. We talk about 74% of Angolan citizens using mobile services and about 20% for internet access. But if we are to look at the country, there is a breakdown. There's a huge breakdown between rural areas and urban areas. Only about 20 to 21% of citizens, and these are data actually from 2014, the time of the national census. Only 21% of citizens that had access to communication. And if we are to look at the internet access, it gets even worse. And along the time, COVID-19 came. There were many constraints that we all felt, and I believe that these breakdown even got deeper. So it continues to be a great challenge for all of us. And that is why, and within the Ubuntu spirit, we invited these distinguished figures to lecture us on at a continental level, at a regional level, in terms of your experience, of vast experience. How are we capable of dealing with this enormous challenge? Because we won't be able to achieve our mission in the information communication technology sector if we are unable to take quality telecommunications at reasonable prices for all Angolans. Not just those citizens from Talatona, but for all Angola. That is a great challenge. So let us learn from these set of experts. There will be great input from them, and we will surely be able to learn from them. We are already updating the ICT White Book, which happens to be the Bible for the development of our sector in the country, and by which the national broadband strategy will be produced or developed. Now, I'll give the floor to those who were supposed to talk already. So, Marianne, the floor is yours. Please tell me, in terms of your association, our association, how is the continent looking at this issue? What are the projects, plans, and strategy that have been put into place to deal with this situation? You have the floor, madam.
Thank you to giving me the floor. First of all, let me thank the government of Angola, the Ministry of ICTs, the organizer, and also to thank the people of Angola for the warm welcome. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you today and to talk about this very important topic. As you may know, in 2020, the African Union had a state adopted the digital transformation strategy. And one of the main objectives is to reach to the objective of to connect 90% of the African population by 2030. This is a very ambitious objective. And the role of the African Telecommunication Union, which is my organization, is to contribute in the implementation of this strategy. Digital transformation is now, as you said, especially with the context of the COVID, become very important today to make a sustainable development for the continent. So, as you may know, we need to develop Africa, and let me give you some facts about Africa. Today, we have 35% of African countries landlocked, and 60% of, thank you, and 60% of the population is living in the rural areas. So this is very important to bridge the gap, as you say, between urban population and rural population. And one of our objectives is to understand how to assist our membership. Let me tell you, African Telecommunication Union is a intergovernmental body, organization. It's the African Union specialized body, agency, specialized in telecommunication. And the role, the mandate is to develop ICTs and to promote the digital inclusion for the continent. So we have to conduct some studies and to also establish a strategic partnership with our associate members. We have around 60 associate members from global companies and okay. It's better.
Okay, sorry. It's okay? Yeah. You can hear me?
It's perfect. Please carry on.
And we conduct some studies about what are the key issues and concerns regarding the connecting the unconnected and how to find out the solutions and to contribute to develop regulatory frameworks, to develop national strategy to connect rural areas. Of course, as you said, now we talk about broadband connectivity. The narrow band connectivity are obsolete now because we are talking about digital inclusion, meaning we need to develop e-services such e-education, e-health, e-commerce, mobile money, and now it's only using broadband technologies. And to look forward sustainable solutions, we need to develop this kind of broadband infrastructure. And of course, one of the main issues is how to deal with some contrast. For example, we need funding, we need investors, we need to taxing policies to promote the investment in these areas. We need also to have national strategies and national providers for these specific areas in the country. And also to think about sharing resources with cross borders between different countries, sharing infrastructure with other sectors. For example, today we come with the transport sector, we come with the power energy sector to develop solutions, cost-effective solutions, broadband solutions that will promote the investment and promote and reduce the costs that for sharing this same infrastructure. Thank you.
Obrigado, Miriam.
Thank you. I'd like to touch on what Marian just said, and I would ask Anna Rita that from the SADC perspective, since our speaker spoke about the strategy, and these strategies are ours. When we are talking about ATO, we are talking about us because we are members, member states. Anna Rita, SADC has goals and targets. After these strategies, where do we want to reach by 2025? And what are the challenges we have ahead of us? And how are we supposed to prepare ourselves in order to overcome them?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon once again. Happy to be here. With some of you may have seen me in the earlier session in the morning. I work again, like the chair has mentioned, the moderator with the International Telecommunications Union. Our bosses are you, the member states, and the African Union. We're here for you, we're here to support you and to work with you. And I like the question that you've asked me, how are you seeing things from the membership SADC point of view? First of all, I could, picking from your numbers, you mentioned 20% Angola having data. That is really, really not up to speed. I have a feeling it is underreported. Allow me to say that because you quoted the 2014 data. And I want to start by committing to work with you through the ITU to make sure that we have matched to date current statistics. We have a forum we're planning in Cape Verde for Portuguese speaking so that we can harness our power of data to measure ICT much more effectively. I have a hinge 20% is really on the low side and some is not being captured. But again, regardless, with the mobile where data is easily available, we are at 70% and the African Union's target is 90%. In the next 7 years to the SDGs, we have a lot of work to do as member states. The SADC has also got its targets aligned to the African Union, which are also aligned to what we have at the global level to have connectivity, enable connectivity to attain SDGs. I have to say there's been tremendous reach, tremendous effort. If we look back, like I mentioned, 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, we were in a much dire situation where access was still a very big challenge. We are fortunate COVID has made everyone's eyes open, governments, everyone is now really noticing the importance of digital. I'm sure your minister or anyone, then they go to the highest level and they talk about you need to connect the last village because they can't be disconnected, and you tell them they can't be out, and only technology, they will wake up and listen. That wasn't the case. Even just 2 years ago, you needed to get the ears of the policymakers every time you needed to speak about digital, but now we are in that space where everyone's listening to us. Even in the global economy, the most revenues are generated by our sector. We have the opportunities to employ so many people in terms of youth employment and innovation. But again, putting it back to the topic, what happens to those last people where we don't have connection? The 20%, the 30% in the rural communities. This is very, very critical. One of the things we do as ITU is to see how do we aggregate demand for the rural communities. The most important thing is sustainability. Most of the people in those rural communities, one, they may not have the necessary skills. Two, they don't even see the value of having a phone or connecting because they know the phone is just for talking to so and so. Beyond just talking to my person in the town, they don't see any value in owning a phone, and they don't really need now to pay so much money to access technologies. We need to create that value. My mother in Kumusha, in the village, in Chunune, is it? I learned some new names in Angola. My mother, what is the value of my mother to have that phone beyond just talking to me and to spend money on that? And that is what brings the business people in the play. They're not just putting their infrastructure, but we need to see that the infrastructure has value and meaningful value to our people. So ITU, we work with our private sector. We've put in place a platform we call Partner to Connect platform, where we bring together the global community, the private sector, the industry, the academia, to pledge, guided by government. We spoke to the Minister of ICT 2 years ago, and they were saying this is our policy. We're looking for partnerships to help us extend partnerships. And we got so many pledges of various people from the various sectors who wish to come and support the development of the rural communities. That is the platform we wish to put in place. And we mentioned earlier, the SADC needs to also put in place platforms that attract meaningful partnerships to support our people in the rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Anarita. Thank you for the explanation. Now, Paul, the floor is yours. Portanto, vou passar a palavra ao Paul.
I'll give the floor to Paul. And I'll just look at Anna Rita just said about the challenges, just mentioned about the challenges that we should connect until the last village. We should find a platform that would lead us to that. And it's not just an issue of doing it. And there will be plenty of business opportunities. That's a way of making money. Even in young entrepreneurs, people here, this great challenge we have, that could also be a huge opportunity for you to open up a company, to open up a project, create cooperatives so as to help resolve these issues as long as policies are put into place. So, Paul, what can IST do in order to accelerate or expedite on this great battle?
And we thank the people of Angola, government of Angola, President of Angola, the Minister of ITC for their wonderful hospitality and inviting us to this very impressive conference.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I heard your passion in your opening speech about the unconnected. Some of my colleagues on the table, they mentioned cost effectiveness and sustainability. We at AST Space Mobile, we believe the question of connecting the unconnected, or why they remain unconnected, is a fundamental economic challenge, first of all. It's an economic challenge simply because Base stations in rural areas can cost twice as much as in urban areas, while the revenue opportunities for the investor, for the MNO, can be 10 times lower. And the OPEX, the recurring costs of power and maintaining the facilities can be up to 3 times higher than urban areas. There have been various approaches to bridge this gap. Some include, as one of my colleagues mentioned, aggregating demand to try to make it cost effective in terms of schools, telecenters. Others are technology driven, like getting low cost BTSs, green energy. All of them, in our opinion, have scored impressive gains, but still fall short of connecting the last of our unconnected territories and people. And in fact, none of them meet the emergent new regulatory standard of 100% coverage of the territory. There's a way, cost-effective way and sustainable way of making sure this gap is bridged. They consider satellites, low Earth orbit satellites in particular. There's the ubiquity of coverage, sensitive to terrain, and also low latency, so there's a potential there to integrate them in mobile terrestrial networks. There's also one factor that is becoming more and more clearly evident ever since the COVID, that more and more people, particularly the young people, prefer to consume their broadband via their smartphone. I put it to you, this is the way of the future. Just like when in the past you used to call a place and technology came along, you no longer needed to call a place, you call a person. Today, we have the technology that you will no longer have to have broadband at a place, going at a telecenter or at a school, but you'll have the broadband delivered to your handset. The technology I'm talking about is satellite direct handset. We at AST Space Mobile, take the radio head that is at a typical BTS, we put it on the satellite, and then we take the baseband, the E-Node Bs or BTS, and put it next to the MNO's core. By this technology, we have eliminated the need for infrastructure in those areas where it's hard to invest in infrastructure, the need for OPEX, sending engineers out, the need for diesel generators. Yet, we have given the mobile network operator the capability to cover 100% of the national territory of Angola, including even the ocean. They only have to tell us how far they want to go. How do we do that? It is said the best technology, there's no difference between it and magic. We have over 2,600 patents, and we're the only company in the world today that has this technology. When we finish our agreements with mobile network operators in Angola, such as Movicel or Unitel, they will be able to tell us where they have terrestrial coverage, and that they will keep. And where they don't have coverage, we'll turn on our satellite cells, and the overlay of their networks and our coverage will give them 100% territorial coverage. You, the consumer, will not notice a difference because your handset, when it's out of range of a terrestrial BTS or E-Node B, will automatically connect to the satellite. And you'll always have 100%. And it will support 2G, most importantly 4G and 5G. So it's a major, major paradigm shift for first of all, the policymakers. They'll no longer have to look for where do I get the funds to subsidize rollout in this province, in this area. Instead, the main headache will be, how do I subsidize the cost of smartphones so that every kid, every person in the villages, instead of just using the cheapest handset, can use 4G, can access 4G. So, and you, the consumer, will not have to do any modification to your cell. It's no SIM card, no specialized SIM card, nothing. It's just, transparent. There'll be no extra charges for the service. The MNO will retain the same tariff structure because this is designed for the least connected of our communities. I'm so passionate, I could probably go on sometime, but I think that gives you a flavor of what is coming, and it's within the next year or two. This will be available in Angola.
Thank you, Paul. Obrigado, Paulo, por essa.
Thank you, Paul, for this exhaustive explanation. That was a novelty for many of us. So the challenges are still big for us to be able to provide connection to those who don't have access to connection. So I'd like to listen to the opinion of Anglobal, because you have a huge experience in working in very difficult and remote areas of the country by taking communication there. So I'd like to listen to Manuel, what you have for this big audience. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. I was listening attentively the explanation of the moderators, and thank you for helping us to share this forum with all the present members here. We are aware of the difficulties that we have in working in remote areas, and Anglobal, we provide a national coverage. We are present in the 18 provinces of the country. We provide a live access to all remote areas in areas of difficult access, and if you have to state the difficulties and the climate difficulties, especially after the rain, I'll say that it will be difficult to do it and maintain this operation alive. So the difficulties that the telecommunication companies feel, we know what are they, and I'd like to speak about the importance of us going to these locations. It was mentioned here the social differences, economic differences, and the moderator provided that information. And Anglobal, through a set of companies and brand that they have, we understand that nowadays it doesn't make sense, and with the use of 5G, it does not make sense to have a huge and heavy structure, or according to the model that was used years ago. So we should use more dynamic structure and light structure, and sharing of infrastructure is a reality that we should take that into account, especially when you look at extensive territories such as that of our countries or African countries. And we also work by sharing infrastructure. That sharing of infrastructure is done by a company. So when we speak about infrastructure, we speak about make sure that with low investment, we can provide a network, remote infrastructure, so that we can look also at the economy and in a positive manner. So the return should exist, but we should share infrastructure, and we should also invest in this. And doing so, we need to have a financial aid, and regulations is important. And for that to happen, the government should look at that in order to facilitate investment and how we can bring um, investment. So 5G shows that sharing of infrastructure is extraordinary and is needed. We are not seeing the most urban cities are not providing access to internet to bigger or urban areas compared to rural areas. So it's fundamental for us to make an analysis and looking at sharing of radio, for example, that in 5G it's a reality, but sharing of radio should be regulated because we won't go or provide all the solutions only for the cities. But what we should do is to share of the radio in order to provide help to the sharing of energy, and that would use the investment that each operator should do it, and we make sure that it can be channel necessary investment in other projects. So our experience is extremely important that the unique infrastructure should not be the structure that can be used for remote areas due to economic reasons, and also sharing of urban areas is important. And I believe that the energy is one of electricity supply is one of the problem in rural areas, and we find renewable solutions and other solutions in order to reduce the impact of the cost as well as the need of having electricity in this area. So I would like to encourage the young entrepreneurs that if you don't have technology with broadband and we don't have access to electricity supply, and that won't be possible. So we need to fight all in order to make sure that that becomes a reality. And for that to happen, we believe that the investment in expansion of network that's shared in interior areas will bring social economic benefits for the society. And obvious job creation because people who have small companies, they can have a tailor that need electricity and access to sell their products, as well as local initiatives that help us to make the maintenance of all this infrastructure. So all this, it economically should be well analyzed and looked at. And the impact of this is extremely important, and the system of sharing is important to produce capex and opex and the operational cost of all the organization to allow more people to have access to this type of technology. Thank you, Manuel, for the explanation, and I'd like to reiterate the appeal for the young people. I want to speak about the youth. I'm speaking also by myself. I'm about to reach 60, but to say that there's no a limit. So when you feel that you're young, it also has to do with the way that you feel. Thank you very much. And we are seeing that the problem is huge, and the solution, we've got multiple solutions. There's no unique recipe to solve it, but we should use an integration. For example, Paul presented an intelligent solution, innovating solution that can be used by using satellite technology. That's part of the infrastructure of land operators. So we want to have one unique solution, one unique technological solution to solve this problem. So that's where I'd like to listen now for the opinion of a leading company with experience in the market. What is Huawei? What Huawei can present to us as something new for this debate?
All over the world. Yes, we can see that for the connectivity to the rural area is not the only issue in Angola, but the issue to over the world. And there is no doubt to connect the last Angolan and the last village here. Let me give you an example. Today we are discussing about not only the connectivity, but also the broadband. Why we discuss about broadband? Because broadband can bring a lot of value to the digital economy. And it can not only benefit the guys in rural, but also benefit the nationwide people. For example, if there is one guy to work in Rwanda and he wants to deliver his cash, his money to his family in Lundaso. If there is no connectivity in Lundaso, what he can do? He can just ask the driver from Rwanda to bring his money to Lundaso. It is not convenient and safe, right? But if there is connectivity, and now in Angola you have a lot of applications like the Untel Money, FACL Money, and a lot of innovative applications. If there is connectivity in rural area, it means that there is a bridge between the urban to the rural. Everything happened in urban, you can bring it to the rural area, especially the cash you earned in the urban, you can bring it to the rural area very, very efficiently. This is the importance to bring the connectivity and the broadband to the rural area. But we can see that this is a big challenge because for the MNO operators, it's a very high cost to build the size BTS in rural area. So we believe that firstly we need to provide very low cost solutions. For example, we can use the satellite as the transmission and the backhaul. And we need to use the 100% pure solar powers with like Angola board together. And by the way, we need to provide a lot of innovations, not only for the hardware, but also for the software, like the remote monitoring system to support us to maintain everything remotely. In Rwanda, you can monitoring the sites and make the troubleshooting for the sites in Mexico, in Lunda North. You can do everything to reduce the cost to maintenance on site. For example, if there is some issues happened in rural area, if you send a team there, this is very high cost, very high cost. If you can use the innovations to make it remotely maintenance, it will benefit a lot. And this is the first point. The second point is about the stable. Yes, we say that we need to provide a low-cost solution, but low cost is not the only important point. The other important point is the stable. Stable. You cannot save $1 in equipment, in capex, but you lost $2-3 in maintenance. If you choose I can't say the bad, but a normal quality of equipment in rural area, because rural area is very difficult for maintenance. And the environment is not good like Rwanda, a lot of sunshine, the big wind, a lot of things happen there. And it's easy to broken, let me tell the truth, it's easy to broken the equipment in rural area. If you choose the unstable solution, unstable vendors, it means that you can save a little in capex, but you spend more in OPEX, in the maintenance. This is another point we need to think about. So from our opinion, our objective is to cooperate with our partner, the satellite, the regulator, and the power company together to bring the most innovative and efficient solution to Angola. This is what our plan. Thanks.
Obrigado, Antônio.
Thank you, Antonio. I would like to thank you for your patience. We already run out of time. We started late, unfortunately, but can't you imagine how comfortable and how we know that's not easy to be in a round table where we've got every member of every member present here up to now. I would like to thank for your patience, but you really are the most important part of this debate, and would like to conclude without listening to the opinion of the floor and the inputs that you have. As I said before, we are in the renovation phase and updating of our white book of ICT. And we said that the White Book was the first sectoral strategic book in this country. In 2001, we launched the first strategic book that was the Telecommunication White Book, and it was followed by the evolution, and in 2010 it was updated and became the White Book for Technology and Information and Communication. And during this renewal, it has a new name that is adapted to the new reality. So the inputs that will come from here can be added in this document. And also invitation to be attentive to the public contribution, because it will lead to development and will have impact in our life up to 2027 or 2030. As we don't have yet the limit date as a document, as a short-term document. So I'll give the floor to whoever would like to ask a question or give their input. Identify yourself, and once again I would like to thank everyone's patience. We won't take longer, but I would like to, if we've got two speakers there.
Let us take this free requests for questions, and then probably one more. Good afternoon. I'm Dai Basilia. It's well known that one of the bottlenecks for the expansion of broadband is the cost associated to it. So my question is there a reasonable price? Is there an ideal price so that this intention to expand broadband becomes a reality? Thank you. Thank you, Deus Vicente. In explanation, I paid attention to a detail, and it has raised many questions. The solution presented by AST company, that by using satellites to expand the network, and then you mentioned about you will see some difference in the cell phones. My question is, as far as I know, many of our smartphones, they don't have a direct connection to satellite. How would this interconnectivity work with an absence to satellite? Perhaps the satellite would have a transmitter, but I couldn't quite understand. So I would like to know how is it going to work? Because in the groups that I'm involved, I usually say this: we are not going to get satellite phone call because we have limitations in our devices. How is it going to become possible, actually? Thank you. Felix, and my question is, you said that in 2020, the head of states in the African Union, they wanted to connect the population by 2030. My question is, how do we feel the impact of the work of the International Telecommunication Union? And statistically speaking, how is it going to be felt, in terms of the targets to be achieved? Let us take one more question, and then we move on to the answers, to the responses. And then, democratically speaking, we are going to decide whether we continue or we close. Yes, you have the floor here. We take these questions. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ado Abakala. And my question goes to Mr. Manuel Calças from the marketing director for. He would say during explanation if it's possible to reach 5G and we would use we would share telecommunication by radio. So my question is, how is it possible if business people, national and international business people, do not accept these types of agreements? How is it possible to strike that deal? How is it possible to strike that agreement of sharing radio bands? So, thank you for the questions. Allow me. There's a German proverb that goes this way, which says that there's no stupid question, there's no silly question. There's no silly questions. There can only be silly answers. So these questions are really pertinent. Some were directed. One was directed for Paul. And the others, I would want to leave the. I want. Perhaps I'll give the floor to Anna and Rita to answer the question from Ande Basilia, whether there is a target or there is a metric to know to what extent can we know whether broadband is accessible in terms of financially wise or cost wise. That was the question from.
Your question. Thank you. Interesting question. Of course, we do, let me tell you one of the models we have in ITU. We do we have a last mile connectivity model that looks at all the critical access points, schools, health facilities, communication centers, population centers, and maps that onto a system. Then we get the the infrastructure of all existing networks. We map that on the same system. And then we can able to know, including power utilities, including node networks. So it's a mapping of locations and infrastructure, and that's what he was talking about. Then we can ascertain that this school, this community is so many kilometers away from the last point of access. The best solution, based on what is on the market, is this. And the least cost to connect that community would be this amount of money. But of course, ours is based on the existing technology solution. That's the bit when we know the distance, the cost. We invite the industry to come and tell us, what solution do you have? I can have at the back of my head that it will cost me, say, 5 million to connect this community. He will come and say, no, I can cover that in less than 2 million. So you can never have a one answer fits all in exactly how much is required to connect a community. But your question also triggered something in my mind. I'm an economist by background. I know even if you have the least cost technical solution, but when you're the only player in the market, there are boundaries in terms of market entry and access, you will never draw down the prices. There's so much demand, I'm the only supplier, I would definitely hike up the market. Even if we are two players, we could connive and hike up the market prices. So the role of policymakers and regulators in ensuring there's that efficiency is very critical. However many technical local solutions will come in place, as long as there's that free liberal market fair play, things will always be stagnant. So that's critical as well. Not only the cost of technology, but also the conditions to allow fair, efficient market entries and competition. Thank you.
Obrigado, Ana. Portanto, a Ana deu uma resposta bastante sábia, porque
Anna, she has given us a very wise answer. She say the fair price will be this, and tomorrow will not be the very same price. But at this point in time, I would just like to have someone who's in this audience, because at some point, in reality, there's a time that we need to have a barometer. Although it's not going to be a definite one, we need to have a barometer so as to know whether we are going forward or backwards. This person is in the second row. With all due respect, we'll give the floor to Engineer Leonel Augusto, who was recently the CEO of our regulator. And we in Angola, just a matter of having a parameter. Just we did look at the reference of the broadband committee, which was a committee established by UNESCO and ITU, and that gives a metric. And we believe that it is being, and they say that it's the broadband is accessible, whether the costs for megabytes is inferior or equal to 2% of the gross domestic product per capita. But for our case, if we are if our GDP per capita is around 3,000 US dollars, and our economists are here, and then it means that we could be talking about 300 kwanzas per 2 megabytes per second, or below that. So we can look at the price. At this point in time, we are below that metric, where you pay 200 kwanzas for megabytes. I mean, it's even below that. This is volatile, just like Rita said. We have to be, and we learn with wise people. We cannot just feel happy for being the best student of the classroom, but you got an 8, you got a B or a C. We need to reach excellence. If we have reached the broadband excellence, we cannot go backwards. And just like Anarita said, we must use all regulatory mechanisms, policies, interaction, infrastructure sharing. It's a fundamental aspect, just like it was said by Marian, and innovating solutions that will lower the OPEX and CAPEX that will be reflected on the pocket of the citizen.
Paul, aí o jovem Vicente quer saber como é que isso vai acontecer.
Paul, my friend, the young Vicent wants to know how it's going to happen. Is there a magic box so as to enable citizens to have lower prices? I mean, how are they going to use their smartphone? Is it going to be an ordinary smartphone to connect it to the satellite, or how's it going to work?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's going to be an ordinary phone. The way your phone connects to a base station, a terrestrial base station, when there's no terrestrial base station, it will connect to the satellite. We've done link budgets. It's basically an engineering question. But there are other IP that's involved that is behind the 2600 patents. And one of those is the Doppler shift. You want to get technical. The satellites are moving very fast because low Earth orbit satellites are moving at about 17,000 kilometers per hour. And one of the issues is that an ordinary phone to attach through a satellite, the Doppler shift, it will not keep the attachment. So we had to come up with a solution to this. Another one, we had to manage the latency. We keep it to below 40 milliseconds. which is below the terrestrial MNO's typical latency of about 93, 94, 95 milliseconds. So yes, there will be handover between the terrestrial cells and our cells, and even between our cells from, you could be theoretically moving from Rwanda all the way to the southwestern corner of Angola and never lose your connection, simply because your handset will switch automatically from the terrestrial coverage to the satellite coverage. We can go into more technical details about 3GPP frequencies. This is why we have to work with MNOs. We are not trying to come into the market and become network operators. We have to work with MNOs using their licensed spectrum so that there's coordination between the two. On the aspect of price, if I may just, I hope I've answered your question, but on the aspect of price, if I may just add on to your comments, our model we propose to the MNO, whatever you charge, whatever is your tariff structure, any incremental traffic that goes by our satellite, we'll find a formula to share that revenue. So you don't have to charge the ordinary citizens, particularly those in the low ARPU communities, any more than they would pay if they're connected terrestrially. So it takes the decision of what price to charge away from us to the MNO and the local regulator. And also in addition, our coverage does not rely on formulas of population, of distances from power structure. Our formula is mapping, cell mapping. The MNO tells us where they have coverage, we'll turn off our satellite cells. Where they don't have, doesn't matter whether there's no population, jungles, deserts, ocean, doesn't matter to us. The coverage will be there. So if you go there once in 20 years, you'll always have coverage. And because our model is based on revenue share, the MNO makes $0, we'll share those $0. If they make $10, we'll share that. So it makes it very interesting to the MNO. They don't have to think of all these millions of dollars in investment, yet they have coverage everywhere. That's why I said, any good solution, you can't distinguish it from magic.
Obrigado, Paulo. A pergunta aqui do jovem.
The question from the young man, that was a good question. And that's a concern. We listened to Miriam, and Madam stated that we have an important organization for our continent. Is Angola taking advantage of this organization? And that was a question made by the young man. It was a good question, but end up being in a situation whereby comfortable or that I like, but not running away from challenge, but now I have to switch because I'm here acting as referee, but I have to act as a player because I don't have anyone from the floor who can answer this question. So I'll give the answer stating the following. It was mentioned here that if today we are able to communicate is because there's a work being done by A2, especially in the domain of norms, and Mary is coordinator for the standardization and development of the African Union telecommunication. And how do we benefit? Because as Angola and member of A2, we participate in the coordination work so that at international level we do the coordination. I'll give an example. When we speak about 5G, how does 5G system can interact or can interact with a television system so that there's no interference. For example, the standardization. So this is discussed in international events, and Africans, as well as ATU, was created so that Africans can participate in these events with one voice, saying don't remove XY system that in Europe is used for mobile service, because don't remove it because we still have it because of satellite. So we need to use this standardization and participate in standardization events as one country, so that we use one voice for the benefit of our interest. And we see that especially with Angosat. In our region, besides South Africa, we are the only ones that up to quite some time we had a satellite in the air. So we need to, and that's done by the rule of UET and ATU, and be member of ATU was possible for us to continue communicating without many constraints. So we like to do more, but we've been taking advantage of this, and there's also an opportunity, especially for the young people who are connected to this specific topic or leaving university now, to run for post in this organization. And in Angola, we are not well presented in international organizations, so we follow all our obligation, especially in the issue of paying quota, and we use very few because we're not well represented, and some of the candidates don't have the profile, and those who have profile, they rather go to, they don't run, or and they don't want to be part of certain organizations. So we should take advantage of the existence of international telecommunication agents. And since I speak a lot, let me stop here. Let me give the floor to Manuel, and I believe we should have told stories, surreal story on how it's difficult to convince, but there's also another side of the coin. In Angola, we've been sharing infrastructure, be it from one way or the other. Let me give the opportunity to Manuel. Manuel, you have the floor. I would like to apologize. Not Manuel, I'm Rui. I'm Adão. I'm Rui, sorry. Adão, ask a question. That's the golden question with regard to the transformation of society. So the golden question on the transformation of society is how society changes and how the regulation enters and how regulation anticipates all the needs of the society. And in this case, we're not speaking about the consequences and the behaviors and how telecommunication are regulated. And is the second most regulated agency in the planet. The first is aviation, the second is telecommunication. So everything that makes a change in people's life is to do with needs, and this need is to do with the change of mentality. As it was stated, I informed the moderator we are sharing, and through our company Antosh, we have been making a passive share. We provide infrastructure, and the operators, they put the equipment in the infrastructure, and we've been sharing in terms of data transportation in the optic fiber network. Angola Telecom has been sharing the infrastructure with various operators, and Unitel has been also sharing. We've been we see the possibility of reducing cost of the shared energy system, where it would be like renting a place and paying the electricity, and also the need of space, the antenna, and looking at some sites in Talatona as an example that we can have an communication tower be it transmission, microwaves, and radiation, and also look at the environmental area. The earth becomes assessed differently, and the space and the profitability of the space oblige the operators to think about their policies. And likely in Angola, we have operators who apparently are not, but they are flexible in looking at this opportunity. And it's also when you say that our way of being in Angola, we are seeing that the final operators have been thinking about this, and sooner or later, not a national network, but in various geographies, especially in the interior areas, to take the connectivity at the villages. And by doing that, I believe that the operator should look at it differently. So when I speaking about sharing radio, speaking about putting the radio antenna and share it. And that's it's possible with other operators. We'll get there. It might take time, but what the operators they want is to take this and yeah, we're looking at investment and make sure that the investment that they're making as a return they might not have, but to say that they may not have immediately, but they want to know if that's part of the solution that is making them to lose money. We can have more money or less in others, but that's a business, and is with this money that it allows them to make profit, but also to reinvest, invest technology, new technology, and launch it. We are speaking about 6G. We don't speak about 5Gs only, but we're talking about 5Gs, and we need to developing. Not speaking about the price, but things are easy, but it has to do with the mass that is used in telecommunication. Telecommunication business is a business of volume. The more people use it, the more people will contribute for the cake, and it'll be easier to reduce the price. We've got a penetration that's high, and I believe that it's normal for us to increase the rate of telecommunication. Thank you. It's not using the microphone. I cannot get what it's saying. I'd like to apologize for that. Can you kindly ask I believe that we should rethink or make sure that the operators did think about the solution. That's good. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to go further, even though we're the last and no one is bothering us here. Thank you for your patience, and please, it's not always that we've got a group or specialist specialized in this topic. Let's give the final thoughts for everyone. Please, let's start with Mr. Antonio Hu, so that in 1 to 2 minutes may present his final thoughts with regard to the atmosphere that was created here, the debate that happened or that's happening. Thank you.
I think we have a very rich discussion today for the rural coverage. And then I think next step is to we accelerate to take actions to make it. We know that maybe increase the rural coverage from 90% to 100% is very tough. But now we are still in, I think, 70% of coverage. If we take action now to increase that from 70 to 90, it will be, I can say it is more easier than the last miles and last Angolans. But now we need to take action. Yeah.
Yes.
Closing remarks.
The relevant closing remark I'd like to do would be to paraphrase the T&T, who have been our partners in developing and improving this technology. And they made a comment widely distributed on Twitter 3 weeks ago when the first ever phone call was made from a handset direct to a satellite to their network. And they compared it to the invention of the transistor and the first television transmission. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the threshold of a major fundamental change in connecting the unconnected. And I hope you'll join me in being excited about this development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For me, listening to my colleagues today covering the rural areas with broadband is not a technological challenge. Today, we need to revise our regulatory framework. We need also to develop our services, e-application. As said by my colleague Rita, we need to create interest of rural population to be connected and to create business and create government services that make this real for those population. So it's not something impossible. I think having this in mind, let's revise our national strategies, having a good vision for the future. And I also invite, as you said, youth, young people. This is your mission, to innovate and put innovative solution, innovative business models, innovative funding models to make this population connected. Thank you.
Thank you. You can tell we come from the same background because I had youth on my list. But what I've learned in these 1 day of engagement with the people of Angola is that there's enthusiasm. We do, as long as the mindset of the people is not changed, it's all just talk. I see a general excitement, a shift in mindset, eagerness from all generations. I can see in the room we have people of my generation and younger, but I can see this great keenness and mindset, and I think we should build on this momentum to get these things done, just changing people's mindset and making sure we move forward. Excitement is, good luck, and we are with you. Thank you.
Thank you, welcome. Bonel.
Já não consigo dizer nada depois da Ana Rita, desculpa.
Cannot say anything else after Ana Rita, because she has said everything. The only thing I'd like to add is that if we don't make this joint effort with the solution developers, with the new solutions that are coming, with the satellite, if we are
O desenvolvimento vai.
The development will be put at question, so the young men will continue having expectation, but we need to have a joint effort. Anna Rita said everything, but I would like everyone to work and move forward for the implementation of good solutions. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. You understood why I gave the last round for the final remarks, because the most difficult part of a moderator is to make a summary of the discussion, and it was done. So I would like to say that Ubuntu spirit, we should work together, and together we will succeed. We should not leave anyone behind. Every Angolan, every African, and the population of the world should feel the benefit of broadband. A round of applause for everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Oh.
Thank you.
We missed the picture in the